Right. Shalom Aleichem Rabotai. Welcome to Yalkut Yosef on our Wednesday class. We were in the topic of lechem mishneh, of eating the bread on the Shabbat table. And I took a little bit of a break from Yalkut Yosef just to dive into more topics I collected from Rav Butbu, from the son-in-law of Rav Ovadia, regarding practical questions on the Shabbat table. So we're going to get back to it in a couple of minutes, but until then, these are stuff that throughout the years we may have touched, but I want to touch it again. And I guess Johnny is joining us right on time. Baruch haba Johnny, Baruch haba Yona.
Ciao,
So,
Zivush.
ciao, ciao, shalom aleichem. All right. So we've touched this before. Now that I'm about to do Hamotzi, and we've established that we need two chalot to do Hamotzi. Only I have one chala, and the other chala is in the freezer. Can I bring that chala to do Hamotzi? Or perhaps there's a better alternative? So we're going to touch these questions. Steve, you remember the answer? Can I use a frozen challah or no?
I don't remember the answer, but I would say yes.
Okay,
That's my
very
gut.
good.
But maybe I'm wrong. Okay.
So Steve is taking the opinion of Rab Ovadia Yosef, and same
All
as
right.
our shita, our system here in this class. This is a class of Yalkut Yosef, the family of Rab Ovadia. But we should know the opinions. There's one opinion by Hey Nick Baruch haba, Ilan Baruch haba. There's an opinion by a rabbi called Shevet Halevi. That's the name of his book. And he says, no, you cannot bring a frozen challah to do lechem mishneh, to use it as a second bread, because it has to be worthy of eating, or else it's like taking a piece of wood, you're playing a trick on me. This is not really a lechem mishneh, it's not bread. Another opinion by a rabbi called Minchat Shlomo says, there is a way to do it. You can use a frozen bun or frozen challah, but the term is that until you finish eating, it's going to defrost, and it is going to be worthy of eating during your meal, and therefore it's not like a trick, like the Shevet Halevi says, and it would be allowed. But the most lenient opinion, and we rely on this opinion from what we are learning today, is Rav Ovadia Yosef. Rav Ovadia Yosef says, what is this thing called that I'm taking right now, this frozen item? What do people call it? They call it challah. It has a name of bread on it. Doesn't matter if it's frozen or frozen. What's the name of it? Since it has a name on it, of challah, it's considered lechem mishneh, and we can use it as a lechem mishneh. So now, what happens when I'm about to do kiddush, and we all know that we put the breads on the table, we cover them so that they're not embarrassed for the reasons we mentioned last time, and we do kiddush first. But now, I used frozen chalot, assuming I, was careful. Yalkut Yosef mentions, make sure to remove bits of ice if it actually has bits of ice on it, because you will be boiling the ice on the plata, and that's like boiling liquid, that's forbidden. But if it's solid, you're allowed to put it on the plata. So he says, remove the frozen ice, but when you put it on the plata, now you want to start to use that. I'm going to do kiddush. Let it keep on warming up while I'm doing kiddush. Is that a problem, or does the challah have to be on the table while I'm doing the kiddush? This is a topic that comes a lot. People say, listen, we're warming up the chalot. Even when people buy them fresh, they like to freeze them. Shabbat morning before the meal, they take it out, and once they finish the kiddush, they want to bring them so they're sizzling hot while they're eating it, which is really, really delicious. Is there a problem with that? So first of all, we have to know the dry halacha. Shulchan Aruch doesn't require us to put the bread on the table during kiddush. Well, we see everybody does that. How come? The answer is that comes from the Zohar, meaning it's not an halacha. It's according to the Kabbalah. The Mekubalim say that it's important that in the time of the kiddush, you should have bread on the table, and therefore it's definitely recommended. However, what's the loophole? How can we do this in a way that we could still let the challah heat up while we're, having bread on the table? So you could bring different bread. It doesn't have to be the bread that you're going to kiddush on. You have more buns, you have a pita, bring that. You have lechem mishneh on the table, do your kiddush. I finished my kiddush, now I'm going to go bring the real chalot that I want to eat right now, and I could do hamotzi on that, and in that way we cover all the opinions. We cover the Zohar's opinion that you have to have bread on the table, but you're still covering your wife's opinion that wants to serve it really, really hot. So everybody's happy. Okay. I have matzot in my house right now. I still have matzot from Leila Seder. Amazing. They stay fresh. I don't know. It's like a miracle. So these matzot, if I do not have another challah, can I use a matzah as a lechem mishneh? So let's begin with the bracha on the matzah. What is a matzah? Is a
No,
matzah?
you cannot. You cannot use it.
Oh, Giacomo. Oh, Giacomo. Yeah, I should have recognized you. Giacomo says you cannot. So let's break it down a little bit. First of all, what is the bracha on hamatzah, on the matzah? On Leil HaSeder it's hamotzi, but throughout the year, the bracha on matzah for
מזונות, מזונות.
throughout the year for Sfaradim it's mezonot. Why? Because it crumbs. So maybe it's worth it to take a minute to talk about these halachot, even though they're coming soon, but just to understand what differentiates between hamotzi and mezonot. Because at the end of the day, they both have a shape of bread. They both look like bread. You take a cookie, you take a sweet challah, a regular challah. What makes it mezonot? So halacha says that the bracha on a pat haba bekisnin, we'll explain what that means in a minute, is mezonot. Only the Gemara, not the Gemara, the Chachamim throughout history, from Geonim to Rambam, Rabbeinu Hananel, all these giants came and tried to understand what does it mean pat haba bekisnin that we say on the mezonot. What is it? So we have three main opinions. One opinion says, you know what makes bread mezonot? The fact that it's kassis, that it crumbs. That's why it's called pat, bread that is come in a kisnin. Kisnin from the word kassis, from crumbing, like the crumbing bread. So one opinion says once it crumbs, it breaks down like a matzah, like a cracker. That's a definition of a mezonot. If it's not crumbing, according to this opinion, even if it's sweet, even if it's filled, even if it's not, it doesn't matter. It's always going to be hamotzi. Second opinion says, no, this is the Rambam. The Rambam holds, in order for a cookie or something to become mezonot, the criteria is that it needs to be made with sweet dough, honey or sugar inside the dough. So when I taste the dough, oh my God, this doesn't taste like bread. This tastes like something sweet. And that's going to be boreh min mezonot. But according to the Rambam, if it's not sweet, even if it crumbs into a million crumbs, it's not going to become mezonot. It's always hamotzi. Right? Different opinions. And the third opinion says if it's filled with something. By the way, one of the Gedolim in Israel said it doesn't necessarily mean filled. It means like together. Like even a pizza is considered something that's filled. A kiss, like a kiss is a pocket. Meaning it's absorbing something else besides itself. A layer of chocolate, a layer of cheese and whatever it is, like a borekas. So according to the third opinion, once it's filled or it has a layer on it, that becomes mezonot. But even if it crumbs and even if it's sweet, it's still going to be hamotzi if it's not filled. So we have three different opinions. We don't know when to say mezonot, when not to say mezonot. Halacha lema'aseh, it's very simple. Because since we have a doubt, we're not going to say hamotzi. We're always going to say mezonot. But when is this? Not when we randomly, when I see a cookie, so even if the cookie is either has crumbs in it, or it's sweet, or if it has one of those three criteria, or it's filled, that's enough for me to say on it boreh min mezonot. If I'm inside a meal, if I said already hamotzi lechem min haaretz, now when do I say mezonot on a dessert? That's already a huge machloket. Some opinion says no. How can you say mezonot when you said hamotzi? You covered all the mezonot. Another opinion says so. For example, there is a famous Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah says, you know how you could say boreh min mezonot on a cookie if you're eating a meal? Only if that cookie has all of the three criterias. If it has crumbs, if it's filled, and if the dough is sweet. If it has all three of them, then it's 100% boreh min mezonot. So even if I'm in a meal, I could say boreh min mezonot on it. But then comes the Rav Budbul, the son of Rav Ovadia, and says, wait, there's another opinion by the Rashba, the famous Rashba, and the Rashba holds that in order for it to be mezonot inside a meal, there are two more criterias. One of them, that the dough itself spills. If it's a dough that you hand rub, it's not going to be mezonot. It has to be a dough that you pour, like crepe or whatever it is. And also it has to be very, very thin. In conclusion, Rav Udbul holds that the only thing I could say mezonot on during a meal after I said hamotzi is a wafer. Because the wafer is filled with a layer of chocolates. It's crummy. And it's sweet. And it's made by spilling the dough and not, rubbing it down. And it's also very, very thin. So that's one item that everybody will agree that it's boreh min mezonot. But if it's not that, during the meal, it's going to be hard to say on it, boreh min mezonot. Now, we began this whole discussion because it's just important to know, when do I say mezonot during our meal? It's not so simple. If we have a doubt, that we don't do it. The Hamotzi covers it. That's what the Rav David Yosef holds. But, now we're talking about a matzah. A matzah, according to one opinion, the opinion that once it crumbs, it's born in mezonot. The bracha on the matzah is mezonot. But Giacomo, according to the Rambam, for example, he says, when does bread become mezonot? Only when it's sweet. So even if it's crummy, according to the Rambam, it's still going to be Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Why am I saying this? Because we need to know that almost every mezonot that we eat, some opinions hold that it's going to be Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, except for that wafer. And because of that, we will be allowed to attach any of those mezonot to lechem mishneh. So, for example, if I want to attach a matzah, even though naturally I would say mezonot on it, like Jacob was saying, it shouldn't be valid. But since b'diavad, if you said hamotzi on a matzah, if I said hamotzi on a cookie, if I said hamotzi on a whatever it is, I'm yotzei yedei chova. Therefore, I could attach it as a lechem mishneh. Only he adds here that the criteria should be that it should have a minimum size. What's the minimum size? It's lekatchila. It's not for sure, but lekatchila it should have a measurement of a kazait, of 1 ounce. So if you're adding something to the lechem mishneh that's very small, make sure even if it's a very small bun, if it has those, that 1 ounce, 30 grams roughly, I'm saying rough numbers over here, that will be sufficient to attach as a lechem mishneh. How is it
So
learned?
that becomes 2 matzot, right?
No,
One kazait.
So yeah. No, wait. I thought you were saying something else. You cannot take 2 matzot and do hamotzi lechem min haaretz on both of them. Why?
Of course. Yeah. No. I'm asking that because of the weight, should it be 2 matzot? Because
Oh. I hear what you're saying. So when it comes to matzah, a kazait, one square matzah is a kazait. You don't need a
okay.
kabetza. And Ela Seder, those that eat a kabetza, they need 2 of those square matzot.
Yeah, okay.
By the way, that's the more strict opinion, meaning the opinion that holds that you go by volume, it's only less than half of those square matzot. And that's how Rav Ben Chaim holds. But since we're learning Yalkut Yosef, I'm teaching you what, the method of Rav Ovadia that use weight, even though he'll also agree that we need to use volume. But he says throughout history, the Gedolim used weight because it's more simple. So we are continuing on that track and we use weight. But if you want to use volume and you use less than that amount, we'll be fine. Bottom line, full square matzah, according to all opinions, would be sufficient to be used as lechem mishneh. Now I'm going to ask you a question, Giacomo. It's for all of you. What would be better? I want you to think about this for a second. What would be better to attach to the real challah that I have? I have a challah that is definitely a motzi, and I want to add a lechem mishneh. Is it better to take a frozen challah? Or is it better to take a matzah? Which one is better?
Frozen challah.
Giacomo says frozen challah. Why, Giacomo? What's your reasoning?
Because even if it's frozen, it's still a challah.
Okay. I accept what you're saying, and that's definitely halachically fine. But I want to remind you, Steve, if you have to go, be comfortable. I see don't worry. But, however, there are 2 opinions that didn't agree with Rav Ovadia Yosef that you're allowed to add a frozen challah. We hold like Rav Ovadia, but there are 2 opinions that didn't like that so much. They said, no, it's not really considered bread. But with matzah, any opinion would tell you, everybody agrees that if I said hamotzi lechem min haaretz on a matzah, it's fine. I'm yotzei yedei chova. It's not like a tchiyah b'bracha, but b'diavad, it's okay. When it comes to challah, not everybody will agree. We follow Rav Ovadia, so for us it's fine anyway. But if you want to cover as many opinions as you can, it would be better, and this is strange, because usually I would think a frozen challah makes more sense. It also looks like bread, but either way is fine. But if you want to, really dig into the details, actually a matzah would be better because if it has a kazait in it, because everybody agrees that b'diavad, if you did hamotzi lechem min haaretz on a matzah, you'd say dechava. But not everybody agrees that if you did it on a frozen challah, you would say dechava. All right. So this we spoke about the Rashba and the frozen challah. So now we're going to go back to the Yalkut Yosef. Maybe that's certain things that we said outside of the Yalkut Yosef right now, because I felt that it's important to deal with these questions, because these happen on the Shabbat table all the time. But now let's dive.
Ziv, sorry, if it's not the right time, sorry, but so we can skip it. But I heard someone was telling me in Israel they go by density. Do you know what density means in
Right. So that's
like
what it means volume, meaning, uh,
volume and weight combination in a sense?
so okay, this is how it works. Basically, the Mishnah, according to what is said in the Mishnah, all we need to use is volume. The volume is about, this is the size of a kazait. It's basically a matchbox, a small matchbox, okay? However, it's very difficult for people to understand volume. When you're about to eat something, do I crush the air within it? Do I don't crush the air within it? How big is it really? Is it a little small? But when it comes to weight, when it comes to gram, it's much easier. And therefore, Rav Ovadia, another opinion says, no, don't use the volume opinion. Use the weight because it's much easier. Everybody will be sure. When does this make a big difference? For example, a piece of chocolate, it's very dense. It's very dense, and therefore it's going to weigh a lot, but the volume is very small. But if I take a rice cake, it's huge, but it doesn't even weigh the amount. So sometimes you're going to see differentiations, and it's not, sorry, and it's not so comfortable. However, okay. However, bottom line, we follow the shita of Rabbi Ovadia Yosef because this is Yalkut Yosef, and we go by grams, we go by weight. If you ask me what's the right way is volume. Everybody agrees. Only it's a little bit difficult, and therefore we have the shoulders of Rabbi Ovadia that is leaning on many other shoulders, that we don't use density or volume, whatever you want to call it. Density, I'm not sure. You heard that in Hebrew how they call this density? Because I've never heard of a combination. I just heard of volume and I've heard of weight. Sometimes you want to have both to be a tzedek chova. For example, on Leila Seder, those that hold that you go by weights, but even if the volume looks smaller, but the weight is fine, they're going to add volume because you know what, it's Leila Seder, let's be more strict, so they add a little bit. But bottom line, either path to take, you're good. Rabbi Ovadia.
Mishkaz kulit.
Mishgas Kuli is the density, you are right. But that's not something that you could ever measure. You can never measure, like I'm eating right now a piece. How will I ever know the density of this? There's no way for me to measure that. Not with my eye, not with my hand. You need to be practical. This is what Rav Ovadia is saying. Practically, when you eat something, it says how many grams it weighs. Less than an ounce, more than an ounce. Therefore, we have the shoulders of Rav Ovadia to rely on. But if you want to rely on density or volume, and you're able to look at something and say, you know what, this looks to me definitely like a kazait, you could do that as well. Try to trust your eye. At the end of the day, back then they did not have all these calculators. It was also done by the eye. It's a famous question. Like Rav Ovadia was in a minyan, and they were playing nets. And 3 minutes, according to the clock, before nets, they started Amidah. So Rav David Yosef, his son, he said, Dad, it's not nets yet. There are 3 more minutes. So he said, my father told me, you think back then they had a clock? What was nets? Well, it looks like nets. A few minutes here or there is not the end of the world. So therefore I say the same thing. Back then they did not have the weight, they did not have the volume. It was done according to the eye. But there's certain times that it's better to be more strict. Definitely on Leila Seder, try to cover as many opinions because it's a mitzvah mideoraita. But in other cases, if you want to be lenient and you don't have a way, either way is fine. But since there doesn't Yalkut Yosef, again, I'm telling you the method of the family of Mishparat Yosef, which is generally to go according to weights. Right.
Thank you. So Leila said that at the end of the day, we're required to eat how much matzah? Like how many of those squares
So
are we good with?
you have a few kazaitot throughout the meal. Some eat 5, some eat 4, depending. If you're the one that does the seder, according to one opinion, you have to have one more than the others. But you'll see there's steps where you do hamotzi lechem min haaretz and motzi matzah. For example, over there, there are 2 kazaits. So you have to have two portions of a kazait, which is a lot. So usually you don't use the square matzot. Allah said they use the round ones. And Rav Ben Chaim says about a third of the round one is a kazait. So in that moment, you have to have a third of the round one from the hamotzi and a third of the round one from the motzi matzah. So you have to have 2 kazaitot. That's the hard part because you're time down. You have to finish it like in 7.5 minutes or so, and that's going to be the challenge. In Israel now they're making, I saw they brought it to America also, soft matzot. Have you seen that before? It looks like a pita Iraqit, like a lafa. Simon, remember the lafot here in Ranana? It looks like a lafa. That's what We had a treat to come with Simon to have a nice dinner here in Eretz HaKodesh, B'ezrat Hashem. But the lafot on Leil Seder, it's strange. The first time you eat a lafot, you feel so strange. But that's the Yemenite shita, and now a lot of Sfaradim adapted that in Israel because it's comfortable. You know, you have something that's soft in your mouth. I don't mind the cracking of the matzah so much. I actually find it interesting. It's an experience for the chag, but those that are hard have that solution as well. All right.
So just to add, every year the rabbis and Rabbi Ben Chaim actually get a sample of every matzah that they would use, like 10 of them, and they actually measure it. So we will get exact measurements for each of the manufacturers.
That's amazing. Yes, I've seen Rabbi Ben do it. They actually crumb down the matzah. They put it in a plastic cup or whatever it is. And then they take a measurement of water and they start pouring that measurement of water on top of the matzah. And then once they pour it, but once the cup goes overboard and they see how much water is left, and according to the weight of the water that's left, they understand how much of the weight of the matzah, or according to the volume of how much liquid is left, they understand how much of the volume of the matzah is really required. I think that's how Rabbi Ben Chaim got to, instead of an ounce, it was maybe a half an ounce. It was like 14 grams, one of the matzah. So he goes by smaller portions because he's a big follower of the method of the volume and not of the weight. He says, whoever says weight goes against the Torah. I said, but your rabbi, Obadiah Yosef says that. He says, no. So whoever you want to follow, Baruch Hashem. Sometimes he says, he's my rabbi. I'm not going to say anything against him, but can I say that I don't understand him? I don't understand why he says this. I brought him all the opinions, and he said he doesn't accept. He still holds like this. Baruch Hashem, we have a lot of shoulders to lean on. It's good for us. Come to Shammai and say, I listen to this Rab. He's going to come stand there. Yeah, he's okay. He's with me. Okay, jump right in. Hopefully we have more mitzvot than just the mitzvah that we chose. It's going to be the easiest one. With this, we follow this Rab, and it's easier over there. Like, try to have, a way, a shita, a system that you truly believe in. Can't trick HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, so we spoke about tziruf mezonot. Yes, all right. Now, what about a half a loaf of bread or a half a challah? Can I add that to lechem mishneh? So obviously, ideally, I need to have 2 full ones. It says, but if you do not have 2 full ones, even half a bread is sufficient, and you could use it as lechem mishneh. Frozen challah we also spoke about. Now, what happens when you have those little stickers on the challah? They put a sticker to tell you if it's what the brand is or whatever it is. So to be honest, a lot of the times when I learn salacha, I thought to myself, it's surprising because a lot of times I come to peel off the sticker because I feel like it's like you're going into a mikveh. You don't want to have anything doing a hefsek between you and the mikveh. You want to remove it. You put your kelim in the mikveh, you have to remove all the stickers. So it would make sense that when you do Hamotzi, you remove all the stickers. But says the Yalkut Yosef, said, do not remove the sticker before the beracha. Anybody know why? What could be the problem?
Maybe you rip off some of the bread and it's not shalem.
Exactly the point. Chazaku baruch. Maybe you're going to rip it off, like Nick is saying, and if you rip off, then your challah is not complete. You may know, halacha lema'aseh, in order for a challah not to be considered complete, is when you're holding it and the area that is not attached to it is like ripping off and falling off on its own. That is not, but you want to still, you make perfect chalot, you want to keep them perfect, much better. Do it with a sticker after the beracha. You can remove.
So Ziv, sorry, the second challah that you add, what's the minimum that has to be in size?
Kazait. The second one should be a kazait.
Kazait.
Yeah,
minimum.
It's learned from the pasuk. I think it is, if I'm not mistaken, Rav Palachi says that. He says, Ichlu hayom. The pasuk says, eat it today. And it says, anytime it says eating, when Chachamim spoke about eating, or the Torah spoke about eating, the minimum of what is considered eating is a kazait. And therefore he learned that the lechem mishneh has to be a kazait, because it says about it, eat it. So any eating, the minimum is a kazait, so that's the requirement. If you're stuck, you don't have a kazait, what can you do? Like we said before, you have a half a challah, okay, but always better than it's more than a kazait, because that's the criteria. Okay, now, when I'm doing the Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, and I want to give it out to people, first of all, who do I give to first? Halacha says, according to the Kabbalah, actually. According to the Kabbalah, For yourself, you cut a kazait, meaning a 1 ounce piece. That's the one you take it. After you cut for yourself, don't keep on cutting for others. It's a mistake. That's the hefsek. Once you cut enough for yourself, you have to eat. Once it makes contact with your mouth, even while you're chewing, it's okay. You can keep on cutting. But cut off a kazait for you, eat it, or put it in your mouth. Then you don't have to put the whole kazait, a taste from it. But that kazait is for you. And then cut another piece. According to the Kabbalah, the second piece should be a kabetza, 2 kazait, double the one that you cut for yourself. Who you give that to? Your wife. Your wife gets double. After you gave that, then you can keep on handing it out to everyone else. Now he says here that if her parents are there or your parents are there, then you need to ask their permission, meaning, or you need to ask her permission if you could give it to them first, because really the kavod of the horim, of the parents, comes before the kavod of the wife. But in most homes, you don't see that. Why? Because the parents are mukhil al kevodam. The parents are saying, no, this girl, she's your wife. Of course, give to her first. So they agree to it. But in a situation where they said, sorry, I want to get first, they have the right. It's not so common, but just be aware of the order. They come first, but they're mivatim. They allow the wife to get first because it makes sense to them as well. All right? Now, regarding tasting, if I am somewhere where the guy doesn't know the halachot so well, and instead of tasting the challah right away, and I've seen this many times, the guy's cutting. He's cutting. He didn't taste yet. He's cutting. He's giving. He wants to be nice. He has guests. He's giving to everyone, but he didn't taste yet. Nobody is allowed to taste before he tasted. That's a problem. You have to wait because he did the beracha. You have to always tell, you eat. You should be the first one to eat, right? The only way other people can taste before he tastes is if before them they had their own 2 buns, like in Sudash Nishit sometimes, okay? And they said the lechem mishnah on the 2 buns, so they ate from lechem mishnah. But if they're going to taste before he tasted, it's not considered like they ate from the challah, the lechem mishnah, it's a problem. But when you're doing the Hamotzi, remember, always feed yourself. It's also a problem of the hefsek. And why you continue? You're only allowed to do something before the beracha that is involved in your eating. Cutting for others is not involved in your eating. You cut for yourself, eat. Then with that, go ahead. Same thing with the fountain. You're pouring it into a fountain, and then start drinking from your cup. Once you're done pouring into the fountain, don't start giving up cups because it's nice and polite. First of all, you drink if you have that fountain. You know what I'm talking about, the fountain. There's Shabbat Kiddush that you have a few people drinking. Or you want to start pouring a lot of cups to your guests. No, first of all, pour to yourself, drink. Once you're set, you can pass it down. All right, that was that. We talked about this as well. What is the amount, or let's call the amount of time that I need in order to eat the kazait? So as I said before, Yalkut Yosef holds that it's 7.5 minutes. Within the first 7.5 minutes, you need to eat a kazait. And then once you ate a kazait, you already obligated yourself with Birkat Hamazon, and then go ahead and eat whatever you want. He says, however, be careful. We'll finish with this. Be careful that if you haven't eaten a kazait of bread yet, don't go and eat from all the other foods. You can have from them. You can dip it in the hummus, you can have a little piece of fish. But if you have a small stomach, and you're going to get full from the other foods before you get that kazait in, it's a problem. Therefore, make sure, try to have the first kazait. It's not so hard. It's the size of a matchbox, as we said. Try to have the first kazait as soon as you can. Once you have that, go enjoy the other things. But if you start enjoying the other things, you're going to get full, you're going to eat the challah, you created yourself a problem. That's going to be achilat gasa. You're going to eat the bread without being hungry for it. It's not so simple. All right. We'll stand over here, Rabotai. Purim Sameach, or Shushan Purim Sameach to all of you. B'ezrat Hashem, we shall see you.
Zak Baruch.
Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you.
Azak Baruch. Thank you, Ziv.